I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. That's what everybody is saying. The streets are saying that. Jordan Rodelli, he's on vacation. Andrew Kuo, who has already chimed in a bit ahead of time. It's only because he's hungry to not take a day off. Andrew, it's Horny Thursdays. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Looking up Keith Van Horn's career stats. That's the reason why his number hangs in the MSG rafters, because of the respect we pay him every Thursday moving forward.
A true horny legend, along with Jeff.
Good old Jeff.
So what's new other than Horny Thursdays, which are now a tradition here on Cookies Hoops, the world's most influential basketball podcast, along with Jordan Rodelli being on vacation.
Right.
What's going on? Anything in the news?
I don't know.
I feel like we've hit a bit of a lull.
Yeah,
a Sergio lull.
It's hard to want it more when like nothing changes sometimes, and there's no new news. There's nothing. I'm gonna watch the NFL draft. No sin bin. That seems fun. I might cook something up. It's a good day, man. Not bad.
It just feels like we're kind of in this, Tobias Harris space.
Net zero.
Nothing lost, nothing gained.
Yep, and that's good because at least we're not losing that much relatively. But yeah, I've been like pickling a lot of stuff because stuff's been like turning in my fridge a little bit. So I've been dousing it with vinegar and salt. I'm on my YouTube garbage. Man, I'm doing good.
It's weird because, we've seen people in New York City throwing darts at those who left. Kind of being like, you're not built for this shit.
Who's saying that?
Oh, you've seen it. It's on social media. People like, oh, you left New York, don't come back.
Ooh.
Like, you soft, Duke.
You ain't a real New Yorker.
And I'm like, yes, it is more grim here and it's more fraught when you leave the house because there are people around and people, of course, are the threat. It's not your parents' backyard. It's not the Catskills where you can wander around and not see another human. It is annoying. There are lines for things, etc. But honestly, man, unless you are on the front lines, unless you are working in a hospital, unless you are doing food delivery or putting yourself in harm's way, like working in a grocery store, this is not that bad. I mean, you're pickling.
Well, it's a privileged place to be because I have an apartment that I can stay in, and the socioeconomic part has been well documented. I live here with my wife, and that's it. I don't have like my parents or great grandparents here. We have an apartment, and that's an extreme form of luckiness, and I'm very aware of this. But there's different ways to see this whole thing, and everybody is right. I have not heard or spoken to anybody who is maybe like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm giving it a guess. Everyone's like, no, this is it, and I respect that. So whatever everyone needs to do, they should do it.
I'm mostly speaking about the idea that going forward, there'll be a lot of people using I stayed in New York as a badge of honor. And I'm like, the average person who is using that as a badge of honor in the future is not in the same position or the same leaky boat as the people who are actually imperiled. And I'm already kind of annoyed by the fact that we're going to get that a lot.
Are we trailblazing?
I was in New York, man, during Corona. Like, I was there. I was in the shit.
Are we the trailblazers of shaming people who stayed here?
We're shaming the shamers.
We are shaming the shamers.
Scolding the scolds.
Yes. I'm tired of this thing that hasn't happened yet.
You got to get ahead of the curve, man.
That's right. That's right. Hey, man, you got to see where the league is going.
But it is already happening, though. That's what I'm actually referring to. I've seen people on social media being like, "You left New York, don't come back, man."
Yeah, a couple of my friends started doing that early, but to give them credit, their disposition is that way. You know, it's like, oh, you left the party early. You know, those kind of guys.
You left the Corona event.
Yeah. It's like, yo, you bailed on work a little bit early today. You know, the Mamba mentality guys.
You left us at the pandemic function?
And, you know, there's always going to be, the world is full of cops, man. Even in your friend circle, there's law enforcement.
Yeah, I'm just saying, some people do have it really bad in New York right now. They have it really bad. And we've talked about those groups and those communities.
Shout out to the Hasidic Jewish community, man. That is awful.
Yeah, there was a story, I'm not sure where it ran yesterday, but I read it, about how they're giving a ton of blood after just, with the antibodies to help science and learn more about it and for a good cause. And it is in response to, in some ways, the perception, which is accurate, that community got whacked by Corona. And according to a New York Times story, it was something like 700 members of the Orthodox Jewish faith. And we're talking about like Borough Park, Crown Heights, South Williamsburg.
Yeah.
Like 700 people from that community died of Corona.
And that was a few days ago. Yeah. I'm sure we're over 1,000 now.
Yeah, like no one was untouched. And they did point out some of the things we've been discussing, that there is a distance between sort of mainstream awareness and their community, that some resistance to adopting safety precautions because it was seen as an affront to their very specific way of life. And also that most of them did abide by the right way to do things. So, but anyway, back to my initial point, is that some people have had a very different experience. Most of us have sat around watching Netflix, cooking up white bean and kale soup, and bullshitting on social media. That's like the average experience. And of course, going to the supermarket stinks. It is a harrowing experience, but it's also generally fine. You wait maybe a little bit, but you can get food.
Yeah, I mean,
I just don't want people who have actually had a good run, if boring, like myself. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's just dull.
Yeah, I mean, you'll never
it's
catch
frustrating.
You'll never catch me complaining about it because and you never know what someone's going through, because those people waiting in line aren't maybe acting weird because they're bothered by the experience. Maybe they just lost their job, and like, I think there's a doom that hangs over our heads that I'm like, I cannot figure out what anyone's thinking, because this doom is so different for everybody.
And yes, I'm of course fully sympathetic to people who have lost their jobs, people who are broke, people who are trying to scrape together how they're going to figure out rent over the next couple months. I am not saying they did not have a tough time. I am not saying that at all. My point is, like, I'm trying to draw a line in the sand for myself against 10 years from now being like, yeah, man, I was in New York during the novel coronavirus, COVID-19 outbreak. Yeah, man, I was there. Trust me. Because I don't want to be that person.
I think our police instincts are like, this kind of relates to how in the press briefings they say this could be worse in the fall, in theory, right? And that captured our imagination for it's still going on. Be like, what do you mean? It's like doubled, coupled with the actual flu that we're used to. This could really exhaust our resources. And in my mind, I'm like, no, because we'll have preparation for it. So it'll be different. This kind of, we were not quite prepared. But next time, I think we will have a better plan and people will know what to do. So I don't think it'll look the same. And in the same sense, I think we're not going to get that same like, well, I was there during the blackout. You know, I survived the blackout. We're not going to get that anymore because the police activity on social media is so rampant that it almost overshadows the braggadociousness of it.
Yeah, I guess my only real thing here is to acknowledge that being in New York during this moment is worse than being most places. We were visited by the bony hand of death. Mm-hmm. But individually, the experiences of most of us are not the same experiences as the people in New York who have really, really had it gnarly. The people who are endangered in a really specific, very real way.
Well,
I just don't want to conflate those two experiences and roll them up into one.
Yeah, and I worry about our demographic, and you're right. You're totally right. And like our friends who are on Twitter who have Netflix accounts or can steal Netflix accounts, have a TV to watch it on.
Live by themselves, live with their partner, maybe a roommate. Yes. They don't live in a multi-generational house where one person or two people are still running deliveries risk. Or working in stores as, quote, essential heroes.
And the city is not shut down. It's still going. So people are going to work. But I fear for our demographic because I think every demographic suffers. And this is the mistake I think maybe I always make is I turn against ourselves. Like I turn against the people that aren't at fault. I should always fault politicians and people who legislate laws and stuff. But I fear for us in the sense that like in droves, I think our community has lost their jobs and people are like, I'm still willing and able. My brain is good. I'm young. I can conceivably bounce back from this if there's something to bounce back to, but I no longer work where I worked.
Yes. And I have full sympathy for that situation and I'm not minimizing it in the least. I'm just sick of like I mean, you weren't in New York. You don't know what it was like.
Yeah.
Well, whatever, man.
But that kind of
person, for the average person in New York,
annoying.
It's just kind of sucked.
Yeah, that type of person is always never like your favorite person to be one-on-one with, right? When everyone leaves the bar and you're stuck with that person, you're like, well, I'm done after this drink, you know, like good to see you, you know, like cool. But yeah, that's always a tough thing, and also it's okay if people emote a little bit, you know, and not to take it too seriously.
Yes, that's all totally cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just trying to shame the shamers.
No, it's legit. This is where good comedy. This is remember that Curb Your Enthusiasm bit? Like I'm a 9/11 survivor, and it's like, oh my God, where were you when the towers fell? It's like, I'm a survivor, and he was like, but you're really too young to have experienced the Holocaust. He's like, no, I was on the show Survivor. I don't know.
Shout out to Joel Santana.
Yeah.
9/11 survivors, riders.
Yeah, and there was that also Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where someone knew someone who died of a heart attack on 9/11, and Larry David is like, that doesn't count. It's like, why? He died on that day. It's like, yeah.
Dude, I'm a 9/11 survivor. I am a blackout survivor.
Yeah.
I'm a Sandy survivor and a COVID survivor thus far. Incredible. Like, unkillable.
And the market crash survivor.
Multiple times.
And BMM survivor.
Survived the bad boy era, puff killing hip hop.
Have you experienced, like, I love my Twitter feed because I have picked the people I like to listen to and I just drown out everything else. And a few of my friends I feel like have maybe Twitter has gotten the best of them and they have the best intentions in mind and they want to be righteous, but somehow it's like shouting at a wall that's too tall, and they've either bowed out or mutated into like kind of someone who yells quite a bit on social media. And the forum is powerful. Like it makes people think things that I don't think they would think naturally about things that are important.
Well, the evolution of Twitter as a pipeline into your brain that is ceaseless. As much as you want, you can funnel that right into your ear and into your fucking skull.
Yeah, man.
And this is kind of where you get into things like QAnon. This is where you get into conspiracy theories. This is how you become indoctrinated. And it's self-selecting to a degree, but then it becomes your chosen way of receiving information, and obviously it propagates itself. Mm-hmm. And that's where you see when you look at like a QAnon account, you're like, oh my God, all you follow is a bunch of QAnon people, and you just bounce these QAnon things around to each other all day long. Like your world has become Twitter/QAnon. And it happens with sports too, right? It's like Sixers Twitter.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Knicks Twitter. NBA Twitter. And as you said, you pick who you want to follow. But if you only follow, say, hysterical voices, you are naturally going to bend in that direction.
Yeah. It's like when Kyrie Irving, even though he said he was joking and it was a test and we failed, when he said the earth was flat, he was like, do your research. I'm like, can you tell us who you follow? I'm wondering what your research involves, because
he's definitely went down a YouTube tunnel, because YouTube does the same thing in an even more kind of weird, non-real-time way, where you're seeking out stuff that, or you're being pushed towards stuff that was maybe 5-7 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I just want to watch that guy drink like 2 liters of hot sauce.
Oh God, man, I can't watch hot sauce YouTube.
No, I've opted out. I was tried. It was pushed towards me, and then I bailed on it. I'm like, can't do massive amounts of food watching, or eat food consumption. YouTube wasn't for me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the volume thing it feels so distinctly like Man vs. Food like 5 years ago, and the hot sauce thing seems like maybe a few months ago. But I gave it a shot, and I don't enjoy people being like, "Oh my God, why do my ears hurt?" I'm like, everyone says that like 15 minutes in. I don't know. It's not, hot sauce culture is not for me. I tried. I failed.
No, that's some boomer shit anyway. It's like I love Jason Tatum. I love hot sauce. Love Damian Lillard's really far threes.
Oh, today's the anniversary of his wave.
I know. Of the good shot.
It's like that show, The Good Place. It's like, yes, that was such a good shot. Wait, was it actually a bad shot? Are we actually watching the bad shot?
The brilliantly smart shot that he never replicated again.
Wait for the reveal. It was a bad shot. But yeah, I feel like my self-care has so much to do with like these things that I'm not quite paying attention to, because Twitter is so successful at making you think that this is like the world's talking to you about news and thoughts, where it's just like what you selectively see and what their algorithm or what they decide to show you in what order. And I forget that. I'm just like, oh, this ain't quite real. But some of it's really funny, and I really look for that.
Have you had that experience? Maybe you haven't because of who you follow. I've had this experience where I'm reading Twitter, and it'll be like, President Trump says that he's going to ban all immigration. You're like, fuck this. I don't need to see this. I don't need to be upset about it. And you shut down Twitter, and your next thumbstroke is to reopen it up again as like a response to shutting it down.
Yeah, I mean...
You're like, I got to get off Twitter. You're like, doop, and then you're like, what's going on? Let's see Twitter. Like seconds later, and like, what did I just do? Yeah. What was that like muscle memory?
Yeah. It's like, I am a cop. I'm like, cool, mute, and then that cop shows up. I'm like, I thought I muted you, and Twitter's like, kind of, but you can still see responses. I mean, it's just like a website that's publicly traded that's trying to make money as well, and
of course, to that end, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, like stickiness has been a online media term forever. Mm-hmm. How do you keep people on your site?
Buzzword.
How do you keep them coming back? How do you keep them from leaving? And all these places are monetized and optimized to keep you on them. So when people want to leave and can't leave, it's really a testament to the way that they are built and designed.
Yeah, one of the things that's really frustrating is Apple wants you in their ecosystem so badly that the minute you sign up for something, it kind of, they offer you all these attachments to it. TV, what do you like to use? Apple can provide it. Here's a credit card. And if you ever wanted to leave that ecosystem, it's very difficult. Like, you have to jump through hoops to just exit Apple.
We don't talk about things like Apple or social media in terms of addiction in a real way, but it clearly is. The same thing that draws you to be an alcoholic or a substance abuser or a chocoholic or, I don't know,
A sports fan.
a sports fan, a compulsive gambler, a sex addict, whatever it is.
A runner.
If you are naturally predisposed to an addictive personality, it makes all the sense in the world that social media would have that same draw because it's designed the same way.
Yeah, and it's so well done. The good ones are so well done, and the bad ones are so poorly done. And the good ones make you feel like it might be your fault, being like, "Oh man, people are yelling at me. What did I say?" And I'm like, "No, it's the thing. It yells."
Have you ever seen? I forget if it was a website or it was a video clip. I forget exactly, but it showed how Amazon attempts to keep you from canceling Amazon Prime, and how they hide it, and how they have all these what they call like, I'm gonna forget the term, but it's sort of like dark patterns. It's a phrase, something along those lines. And it's like they change the color and the position of the buttons that say, "Are you sure you want to unsubscribe?" So that if you're just trying to quickly click through, you basically sign yourself back up.
Yeah.
Like it's like a dark algorithm or something along those lines. But they're all designed like that. The whole point is to keep you there. And if you are someone who's like, "Man, I've really struggled with substance abuse in the past, but I'm clean," it's like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not clean at all.
Yeah.
You just have a new drug.
And I think I always think, like, is just living a life a bunch of addictions from various degrees of danger to safety? Like, what is a hobby? It's just, I'm addicted to making model airplanes. I'm addicted to comic books. It's like, oh yeah, what if you can't get the new Black Panther comic? I'm like, I'll freak out a little bit because I really want to know what happens. And I'm like, well, that's kind of a less harmful way of being addicted to something if you don't count Alex Trebek's Loser shot fired.
That was awesome.
It was
Took down Kendrick Lamar fans in a bad way.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I look at that person, just to frame it, the viral clip of Alex Trebek shooting down one of his contestants who was a fan of nerdcore rap. Mm-hmm. MC Paul, shout out to MC Paul Barman, maybe like the first of those, but and him just calling her a loser, and it kind of is going viral as we speak. And I felt bad for her because I'm like, yo, you're on Jeopardy. You are probably not a loser. You just like comic books and stuff.
That was from 2016, by the way.
Oh, why did it go viral now?
I don't know, just because it's funny and people are digging through stuff. I wrote a story about nerdcore rap for something like XXL, maybe.
Let's go. I did not know this.
It was not a long story. I can't remember even who I spoke with for it. If it was like Paul Barman or I honestly don't remember. It was probably a 400-word front of book thing in 2012 or something. I maybe even before that. So I was more surprised that clip about nerdcore, now looking back, was from 2016. Who the hell was listening to that in 2016?
Does it exist? Are we talking about like who are we talking about? Hobo Johnson? But he doesn't really rap about nerd stuff.
No. I think it's as you said. It's like Paul Barman. Even like Even like the scammer nerd rap is not nerd rap.
Yeah, I wonder, is there like a super nerd rap underground where we don't even stumble upon like YouTubes or?
For sure. For sure.
Are there superstars like should I investigate, or is this a dead end?
I would say don't investigate, because I also don't think it's stuff like underground rap. I don't think it's, as far as my understanding is, that it's not like Anticon or Definitive Juck stuff, which was on the sort of nerdier avant-garde side of underground rap, in like the early 2000s. It's not that. It's like comedy dork rap.
Ooh, okay,
Like,
yeah,
it's
this could
about,
go
like,
bad real
yeah,
fast.
it's about like elves and like physics or something. I don't know.
Oh, one of our buddies is in a rap group like this. All right, I'm putting it all together because he raps about Lord of the Rings, and he has elves on stage and like horses that come out.
Yeah, it's that shit.
I get it.
No offense.
He's a Knicks fan too, so hit him while he's down. Why don't you?
No, I play ball with him. I like him. That's a good guy, and his
You know
music
who I'm
is
talking
fantastic, and you should definitely listen to it.
A lovely dude, good DJ.
If you like the kind of stuff that really rubs Alex Trebek the wrong way.
But a slight segue. Now that we can't,
Nerd basher Alex Trebek. You
I
run a
know.
trivia show.
I know.
Has he been shaming nerds this entire time? He's like, these dorks who know all this stuff. I just want to pants them, give them a wedgie. Is Alex Trebek a jock?
Is he gaslighting Ken Johnson? Actually, yeah. I mean, the one refreshing thing about this thing that is going viral with this Trebek thing is like the idea of like loser and nerd has kind of not been in my brain for a long time, and to think about it again, I'm like, whoa, what a dated thought. But right, I mean, I guess we have the Big Bang Theory, right?
Well, I know I've gone on this spiel at least once about how the devastating impact of Revenge of the Nerds
Right.
changed the world and American culture in a horrific way. Just destroyed the fabric and tapestry of the planet, the celebration of the nerd.
I
But then
disagree,
remember-
but I know exactly what you mean, and I'm with you.
Great. And then we had that moment where it'd be like a hot girl in glasses being like, I'm a nerd. Look at me, a nerd.
Yeah.
I have a book. I love science. And that was a whole thing, remember? It's like mid 2000s. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a nerd. Nerds are cool. And now, at long last, maybe we're finally getting the blowback to the nerd revolution. We now know the evil that tech companies and middlemen have wrecked across our society, and we can now, like Alex Trebek, our spiritual leader, stop the nerd revolution.
It's surprising coming from someone I know who loves stats.
It's not stats are cool as shit, man. Numbers, it's like money.
More stats, more money. Yeah, but it was cool to see, and it made me think about nerd rap more than nerds themselves. And it's weird because sometimes it's nice late at night when I hear a car like pumping music in my neighborhood. It kind of reminds me of like that there's people out there who like,
Aren't nerds.
oh right, because pumping like a Tribe Called Quest song
Ooh,
in
yeah.
your car when you're 45 years old is not nerdy.
Well, that can go either way.
Oh, can it? It could be cool.
It could be cool if you're like 50 years old. And you're like,
I don't know. How many 50-year-old people have friends who pump Tribe Called Quest and are like, that's a cool dude?
I don't know. There's someone in my neighborhood who keeps cruising around playing like deep cuts from Big Pun's first album. And I'm like, is he lame or is he awesome? Like,
We'll
I
never
don't know. He's playing Capital Punishment. Like the title track, like that track is hard. You don't really hear it much. I don't know.
Well, it made me
Features a
think.
great verse from the rapper named Prospect, who no one's even heard of
Right.
in the last 2 decades.
I mean, it's a selective thing now, right? Because like late at night, there's not many young kids who can afford these sound systems in cars that they can drive around. Like I'm talking about like 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds, and so we're just hearing like in my neighborhood, I'm just hearing probably this one guy who's playing like 90s hip hop or like Jay-Z, Nas, and
Well, this is definitely the same guy because I've heard 90s rap 5 times from a car that is trying to park on my block.
yeah.
It's him.
I mean, respect, there's some jams, man. But I love to hear it, and it is awesome to be reminded of all that funny stuff out there. But it makes me think of, like, we're not going to get a street anthem this summer. And usually we would have been debating the contenders currently in April,
Yeah, and this kind of ties into the debate about French Montana versus Kendrick and which side you fell on. If you were someone who liked going out and you remember hearing Pop That and what it did to a club when that song was, I mean, honestly, over like a 6-month period. It wasn't like a week when it was hot. Like Pop That just set a place afire. And if you weren't that kind of person, if you were someone who prefers, staying home and watching Jeopardy and being shamed by Alex Trebek, it doesn't hit the same. There's no, well, yeah, I remember that song. It was a hit, but it doesn't conjure anything because you weren't out. And I think that French debate really touched upon that there's a lot of people who make decisions about the mythology of rap and who is great and who is not, who are not necessarily hyper social people. And it's going to cause you to devalue someone like French Montana, whose forte was being on bangers in an era when popular records were made for the club.
Yeah, it's a great eye test for stat thing. And, I was more disappointed when I heard people trying to differentiate the idea of a hit and like an anthem. I was like, we get it. So who do you side with? Because both these guys are like tremendous candidates for this debate, And it's like, no, but you don't understand. There's a difference between a hit in the club and a hit on the charts. I'm like, yes. So is it French or is it Kendrick, And
I don't think Kendrick has had chart hits either, though, right?
His albums do very well, and we talked about this yesterday.
Yeah.
His albums do great. But French has been on Billboard, like they chart differently. French has songs. Kendrick's albums do really well. They stream well, but like you said before, the numbers are really dicey with this thing, and as well as your experience. Like we could have gone out the same night to different places, and I could have said, yo, I didn't hear any French, and you were like, I heard 3 French songs.
Exactly. And I'm sure there are people who are like, are you kidding me? Kendrick all day, who never heard the song like Chop It Down in public and have maybe never heard the song at all.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, that's a smash.
Yeah.
But you may never have heard anything that I may have never heard a song that was off of Kendrick's, early mixtapes that you were online.
Yeah, right, yeah.
You were on the computer with your friends talking about how this song meant so much to you. And I'm not actually trying to like shame. I'm saying for real. Like, oh, this is the most meaningful mixtape to me. Like, this changed my life. And you are talking to 100 people who feel the same way. And you're like, are you kidding? That's like the most classic material to me. And I'm like, I just never heard it.
Yeah.
Like, I was out touching net, man.
Right. I know. Like, when I remember at the final few years I was DJing out live, I was just like, I was kind of spinning my wheels a bit. And that's when...
Pun intended?
With my elbows.
Remember when you do like this, you start beat juggling and then you do spins as you were beat juggling, like the intro to Top Billin'? Sorry, I'm going to stop immediately.
Dude, I was... you just beatbox. That's twice.
It was really close to beatboxing. It was very close. I realized what was happening and I pulled the plug.
I love it. I hope we see a third beatbox in the future of Cookies Hoops. But no, I'll tell you, like towards the end, I was getting so lazy that I was buying like DJ Drama mixtapes off of Canal Street, digitizing them with like no track listings and putting together like Frankenstein CDs that I would just bring to the club and just like put in with no mixing. It would be, and the drops would be in there. Obviously, it's like dramatic, and it would just like be
Gangsta
playing.
Grizzles.
Yeah, and it was okay because it was exciting to hear like music that came out that week, and the Gangsta Grills series was insane. Like it was for 2 summers. Those tracks were really, really important, I thought. But it was a fun way to do one thing and a not fun way to do another.
I've kind of forgotten what mixtapes fell under the Gangsta Grills umbrella. Like I remember there was Wayne stuff and there was Jeezy stuff, but it was so prominent that I actually
like
kind of
hit ones.
forget what ones were like drama introduced or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
the
yes,
big
you're
one-
right. They're an incredible series, but
Oh
it
my
also
God,
wasn't really him. Like he would yell a bit and he would like start a couple songs over, but it was really a promotional device for the specific artist with the DJ drama, like, you know, basically watermark and, you know, stamp of approval, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, like there's record labels in my life that I would just buy whatever they put out. Like Compact Records probably was a good one. I bought every Bad Boy record, you know, like new shit on Bad Boy. Okay. And the drama seal of approval was valuable. I can think of the biggest one would be like, other than the ones you mentioned, would be like Can't Ban the Snowman, you know, after Thug Motivation. Like we were just waiting for it. I remember getting a text on my flip phone being like, I'm looking at it. It's out on Canal Street. And just me being like, well, I'm going to Canal Street. Young Buck had a really great one.
I'm looking at a list that Deadspin did where they ranked them, and there's 145.
Amazing.
ranks.
Can you just name like the top few?
I'll just give you their list, and this is ranked from. I'm doing one backwards. I'm not going to reveal number one. They say Lil Wayne, Dedication 2, Jeezy, Trap or Die, Little Brother, Separate but Equal. I never heard that. Gucci Mane, Mr. Zone.
Oh
6.
my God! Yeah.
Yeah, Jeremiah, Late Nights with Jeremiah, Lil Boosie, Streets Is Mine, Lil Wayne, Dedication, Freddie Gibbs, Babyface Killer, Ghostface Killer, Fish and Chips, Meek Mill, Dream Chasers. This is a different list than I would have made.
Yeah, me too.
Like they've got your boy Rich Homie Quan at 12 with I Promise I'll
liked
Never
him.
Stop Going In. He was great.
Yeah, man.
To me, it's like Meek and Wayne
Yeah.
and Gucci and Jeezy. Those are the ones the artists that I associate most with him.
For sure. I mean, Wayne just dominated that era, I thought. He was so prolific and put out so many legitimate tapes that him and Joel Santana and Cameron, I thought, did really well for those years. But, you know, like to bring it back to the present, that was a lifetime ago. Like, do you think there's some musicians in the scene, or like what suffers from this isolation shit? Like if the streets can't co-sign for something like French because there are no streets right now, like is a version of your Revenge of the Nerds thing, like people talking about Michael Jordan over LeBron, Kendrick over French, like are we in that era?
Absolutely. Going back to what you said before about what's the summer anthem going to be, and I'm speaking about this from, you know, a New York regional aspect, and this happens in every city. You have a local smash, and sometimes they become national hits, sometimes they don't. But in New York, you've had Bobby Shmurda, you had Lil Ma, Young Ma.
Young M.A.? Is it Young Ma or Young M.A.? I'm always
I
confused.
never know either. Never. I've said it once and been corrected, said it the other way, also corrected. You just can't win.
That's fair.
Let's see. You also had, I'm trying to think what else. Like last summer, you'd Welcome to the Party by Pop Smoke, rest in peace. But there's always one.
Yeah.
There's always one hit that breaks through. But overall, Cardi B. You know, I mean, saying those were the ones that I remember in recent years. But how are you going to get one this year, right? Because you can't make a video. People can't party. People can't get together and you're not going to have that natural, or maybe you will. I guess maybe this is the thing. Do we evolve? Mm-hmm. Do the kids who are in Canarsie and Flatbush, who help define what these records are, and then push them to a place where people in the music industry start paying attention? And then once they start paying attention, then it starts getting on the radio, and then it becomes a local anthem. By the time it sort of trickles down to mainstream New Yorkers as a hit, maybe it's just going to happen in a different way. I mean, I'm being optimistic here.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. Like, yeah, I was ready for like the drill scene to take over and like produce the pop star. You know, rest in peace to Pop Smoke. But like, I trust. This is the dumbest thing I'll say all day, all month. I trust the internet here, and I trust them to like. I trust it to come up with like a summer anthem for us, and for us to be like, we're all into this, and this song is kind of fun, and we're all gonna get on board, right?
Yeah, me too. And I think it'll come out of like TikTok or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It'll be the same teens adapting to the situation and creating a TikTok for a song that is buzzing within their little part of the non-QAnon internet.
Yeah.
Like Flatbush internet will come through. I have faith.
Yeah. And maybe that was happening before Corona. Maybe because, like, as we talked about for years here, the club scene here has kind of changed a lot, and there's not as many options. There's not as many people doing different things, and Canal Street's done. I talk about Canal Street only in, like, effigy, you know? Oh, is that the right word? Only in spirit. And
I don't think New York, like Manhattan clubs, are breaking songs at all. I think they're breaking out of like neighborhoods, out of crews, out of like communities. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're breaking at all because like Flex is dropping it somewhere. That just doesn't sound like a valid way that a song would become a hit in 2020.
Yeah. And the drill scene used the internet quite a bit, and YouTube is big, and it was already changing. And as we keep on saying, as the most influential podcast, the coronavirus is an accelerant. And so this was already happening. Mm-hmm. Now it's going to accelerate it to a point where it will be, we'll recognize it as a new thing.
And you'll have several white chicks from Milwaukee being able to co-opt it immediately within seconds of it being introduced.
And making a great TikTok.
And being invited to the NBA All-Star game off the strength. But your point about pop culture changing, you know, look at Hollywood, because now the emphasis is like, well, everyone's at home for at least a couple months, it seems like. So HBO Max, let's get more people signed up for these, you know, these media platforms. Let's get Quibi out there. Like, people just want media. They need content, and they can't get it anywhere else outside of their home. So it's being pulled from us, and it's Netflix membership soaring. So now the HBO is adding yet another permutation from their model, which has HBO Now, HBO Go, regular HBO, and they're adding HBO Max. This one, I think, is $15 a month. From my understanding, it's adding like Warner's catalog. So you have these old movies like Casablanca, The Wizard of Oz, Citizen Kane, Matrix, you know, a bunch of bullshit. Lord of the Rings for the nerds out there.
Love those movies.
And then it also has a lot of TV. So it's stuff from like TNT, TBS, Adult Swim, Looney Tunes. So it's just a ton of content. 10,000 hours, they say, which I can't tell you if that's a lot or a little.
Right. I mean, it's like...
Oh, okay, that sounds like... Are there 10,000 hours of the show Friends? I'd be like, yes, there are.
It always boggles my mind to think that there are humans on Earth who have heard like every American album and song, probably, and to think of things like music and film as finite is mind-boggling to me. And what you just described is like our entire history of like visual language with sound and motion. It's like, we're gonna offer silent films. I'm like, well, done. We did it, guys.
That's everything.
Yeah, but there's nowhere to go. And like, I think of an idea when they were branding like Cinemax. I'm like, what is it now? Like Cinemax Max, Cinemax 2, more Max? Because there's not enough. And you see Apple and Disney trying to start their own things and corner their market on a pay-per-view thing. Like Disney holds a lot of properties, and
Well, what's also funny is HBO. It's like, okay, we're going to bundle together stuff from New Line, TNT, TBS. So you're just reinventing cable,
yeah,
but through us. It's our own cable, but it's cable.
I thought this is what I was paying for originally. I was like, yeah, I pay for HBO. I get these movies, and HBO is like, no, you got to pay extra to get what you thought you were getting. I'm like, oh yeah, when there's nothing else to do, you re-release Star Wars in Blu-ray or Laserdisc, right?
It's like Elon Musk. Okay, the wave of the future is going to be tunnels beneath the city that have pods full of people that go on tracks.
Right. And you hop over that turnstile to get entrance. But yeah, you're right.
Tech disruptor. You've invented bus stops. Thank you.
And that's all we do as a civilization, right? Like repackage the same thing over and over, whether that be a story in a movie or just the movie it damn self, right? Like it's like we can't make the first Star Wars again, but you can buy it on like 7 different medias. The Beatles are never going to reform and make new music, but you can buy the remastered White Album every 4 years, and
Right. And what you were saying about we now just sort of have access at all times to the full canon of media creation in terms of music and video,
yeah.
except for Homicide, Life in the Streets, and the original seasons of Law and Order. We just somehow, they are not anywhere. Can't get them. Got to buy them on DVD.
The things that disappear are surprising. Like I've been in like a year, maybe 11 of throwing away my CDs, and little by little I come across ones being like, oh, this has not been digitized because it's probably bad, but like here's a weird album that came out for a second. I think of like, this band Jawbreaker put out an album on a major label that was a flop at the time, and they basically destroyed the rest of it, so it was hard to get, and it just didn't exist before nerds who took a break from Jeopardy and repressed it and reissued it, and now it's a thing. But some things do disappear,
like
and
your whole collection of like Orc Killer 1, 2, 3, and 4 from the Nerdcore collection. Like you just can't get that elsewhere.
Yeah, and there's a really fine line between like MC Paul Barman and the Boredoms, right? And the Boredoms are well loved as like this Japanese psych experimental noise stoner band, and it's hard to get a lot of their stuff. And we're veering off track, but like I think of TikTok and I think of Vine. I'm bummed that Vine just disappeared because the librarians couldn't find it fast enough and archive it fast enough. It just disappeared. And these platforms, these big companies that are run by nerds, like they kind of benefit from slashing and burning constantly, being like, aren't you guys dying to see Casablanca? And like, no, but if you frame it that way, I guess I'll watch it again. They're like, yeah, sign up for $15,
As far as basketball goes, that same kind of idea applies to statistics, as we were talking about, in a lot of ways. And, numbers are for nerds, as you have...
numbers aren't cool.
As you've claimed, but like,
yeah.
We're talking about like, Dewey Decimal, big money.
Dewey.
But going back and watching The Last Dance, and in tandem, going back and looking at what happened, because we were young and those numbers weren't actually available back then. The same way, if you missed a show on TV, unless someone taped you couldn't watch it. So now we can go back and look at, say, what Dennis Rodman was doing, like pre-internet. Because back then, unless you looked in the literal newspaper, you wouldn't know who was leading the NBA in rebounds if it wasn't on TV in front of you. It just wasn't there. So, like, Rodman is one of these guys that is obviously featured prominently in The Last Dance. And now we're kind of paying more attention to Dennis Rodman, who is we know he's a great player. He was at one point, maybe still is, a top 50 player of all time, at least on those, lists. I don't think he is, but arguably.
5-time champ, people really love that stuff.
But right, a fantastically interesting player who was a multiple-time champion. What do we think of him now? And do we appreciate him more or less in 2020?
Are you talking through the lens of a basketball player's statistics, or are you talking about kind of celebrity basketball star?
I'm talking about, I guess, from a quantifiable basketball standpoint. With the benefit of more information. Does that change our opinion on Dennis Rodman, or does it confirm it?
Yeah, just trying to ignore his personality, which is difficult. His numbers were so interesting. If you look at them now, he was a beast of a rebounder. If I told you he averaged 19 and 10, you'd be like 19 points and 10 rebounds. The other way, man. He averaged so many rebounds and led the league, I think, 7 times in his career, while averaging less than 10 points a game. Not a specifically good statistical rim protector, never averaged above a block a game, never averaged more than a steal a game. Really interesting dude. Had a few too many personal fouls. He's okay. Turnovers. This is bad radio, but what I'm saying is he is Ben Simmons times 5 if you talk about trying to absorb what his statistical history is.
Well, he's one of the more unique players in that he's a unitasker in a category where there are not normally unitaskers. There are not guys who are obsessive over rebounding in the way that Dennis Rodman was, who also aren't, say, moderately good scorers. The fact that he put up 17 rebounds a game while averaging 7 points one season, it's just remarkable. 16 rebounds, 5 points. It just doesn't, it's almost unfathomable. And there was, in my opinion, a bit of performative theater to the way that he did that. Because if I remember correctly, he would get an offensive rebound, and instead of putting it back up, he would kick it back out. And he ended up, he would take a 3 every now and then, even though he couldn't make them at all. He took a 3 every 2 games, despite being, Giannis-esque in his 3-point shooting.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a 23% 3-point shooter for his career, but he would take one every now and then kind of as a joke. He was a really strange player.
Yeah. And probably a less good player if he tried to score more, or if he didn't do the things that made him annoying, him being obsessed over this one skill he had, or he was, instead of saying obsessed over this one skill, maybe obsessed with having a point of view within a game. He was very determined to put his mark on a game that was outside of a plan that a coach would have. And I thought it was really interesting. I think he may be a bit overrated historically, because he was such a huge personality and he won so many times. But I can't really find a modern day comp for what he did.
One thing in his defense, if we're going to talk about him being a fantastic player, is that his ability to carry a team statistically to being an elite offensive rebounding unit is a big deal. Because there are various thoughts about the value of offensive rebounding, and can it compromise your defense on the end of the court, at the other end of the court? If you crash the boards and become a good offensive rebounding team, do you not get back on defense? Sure. And teams take different approaches. The Spurs, a lot of the time, kind of invented just sacrificing all offensive rebounds. And I believe Doc Rivers teams do that as well. But then you had a team like the OKC Thunder, who just assaulted the offensive rebounds and ended up getting extra possessions despite the fact that they were a poor shooting team. they knew there'd be a lot of offensive rebounds to gather.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all sort of theory, strategy based on personnel. I will say, when you had Dennis Rodman on your team, you were a great offensive rebounding team every single year. Every year. You know, in Detroit, in his final 2 seasons there, they were ranked in the top 5, 6. Then he went to the Spurs. The year when he played the full season, they were ranked number 1. Then the year when he missed a bunch of games, they dropped to 17th.
Yeah.
You know, the Bulls, they were first, they were second during his span. You know, he single-handedly did give you an offensive weapon that does have a tangible, you know, impact. He had incredible wingspan, like 7'2" to 7'4" is the normal estimation of it. So he basically could have played modern center. He had a ridiculous motor. He was a great defender. And he earned you extra possessions off of his motor, his wingspan, and his just single-minded dedication to getting the goddamn basketball.
A third of his
cool
rebounds
weapon.
were offensive. Yeah, it's such a unique player, and I think he's understood and misunderstood for so many different reasons. And I can't wait to see what happens this Sunday, because I heard a rumor, I don't know, I haven't downloaded the episodes, but that this is going to be about the Bad Boys, and it has to be about Rodman. What would be his modern day comps? Like, does his influence play out in a linear way, or is it kind of harder to identify?
If you look at guys who averaged over 10 rebounds and under 10 points, there's really one guy over the last 20 years that most resembles him, and it's Ben Wallace, which is intriguing because he was the cornerstone of like Bad Boys 2, more Bad Boys in Detroit.
That's right.
And really did serve that same role as Rodman and Lambeer and John Sally and Mahorn, like the tough guy centerpiece for the Pistons when they became a defensive Goliath and won a championship led by Darko Milicic. But,
God.
you know, you
York
had
legend.
Ben Wallace had 5 seasons, 6 seasons, 7 seasons in which those criteria of under 10 points and over 10 rebounds like fit his profile. And
Yeah.
a few other guys like that were Marcus Camby, Tyson Chandler, Mutombo had a season like that. Reggie Evans, Gobert, that's kind of your list. And then there's a few guys like Kenyon Martin, Tyrone Hill, who didn't play a lot of minutes, but also hit those markers. But really, Ben Wallace is your guy.
And it's interesting because, I mean, not to get too Jeopardy, there was an era of fantasy basketball where Ben Wallace would go like number 2 or number 3. His statistical output was incredible. Like, he would just dominate all the defensive categories through steals, blocks, and rebounds. And I think he was Rodman plus, but he didn't have any of the distractions that you may think Rodman has. Rodman was not a well-loved teammate, not a well-loved opponent, would get kicked out of games, would be antagonistic. And Ben Wallace was none of those things, but in the statistical package of Rodman plus rim protection.
Well, one thing about Rodman is that he played in the era when NBA teams would always sort of try to scale you the other direction. Oh, you're kind of mobile. We'll make you a small forward.
Right.
And now it seems pretty clear to me that Rodman would have been a 5. And as a defensive 5 who could protect the rim, he was not going to get blocks back then, even though they'd put him against Mourning sometimes. But I think as a 5 today, an elite rebounder, a fantastic defender, I think he'd be really effective as a almost traditional 5.
Yeah, it's tough to tell even within the game. And I agree. I think styles make fights, and I think against certain lineups he would definitely translate to a modern game, and in some lineups he would get smushed. But, you know, a lot of players
I'm just
are
saying,
that
I
way.
think his defense would be comparable because of his wingspan and core strength and basketball intelligence to that of Draymond Green as a small ball 5. He did not have that kind of playmaking ability as Draymond or the ball handling skills, but I think defensively, that's kind of the profile that I'm looking at.
Can't argue with that for sure. And I mean, I kind of want to go back to the Pistons because, we always talk about like every team aside from maybe the Lakers have the identity of like a blue collar, lunch pail kind of guys, like every single team in the NBA. And because it's a useful, motivational kind of identity. But if you look at what Rodman and the Bad Boys established in Detroit, and then you move to the era of Bad Boys 2, direct lineage, right? Tayshaun Prince, Rasheed Wallace, Ben Wallace. And then you go to just last year where Andre Drummond was their big ticket salary cap guy. And it's interesting to think that a player that captures their imagination like Dennis Rodman and Bill Laimbeer, the combo of those guys, dictate the way you think 30 years later. And it's still something that you're trying to recreate through memory and through marginal success. And they finally bailed on that, which is interesting. They let Andre Drummond go instead of re-signing him. And I thought that was a really odd time. And I found myself thinking about Dennis Rodman quite a bit when they gave up on Drummond.
We can take this to teams like the Knicks or the Lakers as well. Mm-hmm. They are built in an identity that mimics past success. Mm-hmm. We are a team that runs. We pass the ball. We are Showtime. Mm-hmm. And that's what they associate themselves. We have stars. Mm-hmm. And Detroit, we're blue collar. We play defense. The Knicks, we are hardcore. We are face punchers. We are garden protectors.
We're cops. We're enforcers. Yes.
And even when the Knicks had their 54-win season, with Melo and Tyson Chandler,
with Jason Kidd,
people were mildly uncomfortable with the identification of the team under D'Antoni, but under Woodson, they were fine with how they played. So it's also results-based, but it's image, because D'Antoni, he doesn't coach defense. Their defense was better under Mike D'Antoni than Mike Woodson.
They had a pretty good defense.
I mean, during Linsanity, they were the second-ranked defense in the NBA. Yeah. And then Lin would hit a big shot and they'd win. But
Amon Shumpert, Tyson Chandler.
And Jared Jeffries.
Yep.
Because D'Antoni was associated with not playing defense and playing at a fast pace, people thought their defense was bad. And then Woodson, okay, he's a tougher guy. They play slower. Their defense is better. It wasn't. Yeah. Their offense was fantastic, and they took a shit ton of threes. Yeah. So even when you play differently, the, atmosphere around the team or the perception might not be accurate. Like, the Lakers play tough D. Like, the Lakers have LeBron and Anthony Davis. I would not say that they're a showy team overall, but it's the Lakers, it's stars, it's Hollywood. So
Showtime.
We also associate those ideas with, like, Andre Drummond. The Pistons have not been a good defensive team.
No.
like they're not good at defense.
Yeah. And I don't care about the Pistons. I love them because I love basketball, but I don't care if they win. So when they gave up on like the Bad Boys thing a little bit, I was like, oh, can't you guys just like stick to that personality? Like, I want things to kind of simulate in these ways. And I talk about this all the time, but like, I want the Hollywood Lakers to always be Hollywood. I want the Detroit Pistons always to be like the Bad Boys. Like, these are funny villains and actors in this kind of story, right? And when they get smart, I'm like, oh, they let go of Drummond. Good move, but that takes some texture away from the league. And you see where a player like Dennis Rodman can stall your entire franchise for decades, because the Knicks drafted tough guy after tough guy, Georgetown, Othello Harrington, Mike Sweetney, like they were
legends.
Legend, Jordan Hill, like all these
Junkyard Dog.
Wait,
he made it to the Knicks, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
he's a legend. His numbers in the rafters, man.
Yeah, another Georgetown project.
Yeah. And it was so clear what they were trying to do, is what you said exactly. They were trying to recreate past success.
And that's what the Knicks did when they went and got face punchers like Bobby Portis and Big Taj. Yep. They were trying to rebuild that idea of We're physical. We have a Morai. He will elbow you in the head. This is how we win.
Yeah. Yes, and even fans fall for it, being like, well, we really need a Morai's toughness. I'm like, do we, though?
It's like, no, the last time the Knicks were successful is because at the time they shot and made more threes than anyone in the history of the NBA. And used in fantastic ball movement and had Steve Novak hoisting from 40 feet out. That was how you win.
Was Quentin Richardson on that team, the original QAnon?
He was on one of those teams, yeah.
Yeah, D'Antoni went and got him because he was his coach in Phoenix, and he made him a unitasker 3-point shooter, and I think he was a league leader. And when D'Antoni went to New York, he was like, I'm getting that guy. He's good at what I want to do.
But the thing is, every team views itself as blue collar except the Lakers.
Yes, which is awesome.
Even the Heat.
Oh, yeah.
As an organization, are we are blue collar, we're culture. The team is sort of more glossy, but the organization is still nah, we're hard nosed. That's our deal. We play defense. So really, it's just the Lakers and maybe Golden State. They're the only teams that you kind of think of as organizationally and civically being about something other than hard work and really boring things like that.
The sunny West Coast shores. Yeah, you brought up the Heat, and that would be a potential for a different culture. But because of Udonis Haslem, they will always have Udonis Haslem. You know what I mean? Whether it be actually him or someone exactly like him.
I mean, look, he's been there for over 20 years.
Right.
Who can forget when he threw Charlie Ward into the stands? No one will ever forget that moment when he squared off with Larry Johnson. Threw punches.
When he modeled the original jersey.
When he injured Willis Reed.
Yeah.
Another guy a lot of people are talking about is probably the MVP of the NBA.
Let's give it to him.
Giannis Antetokounmpo.
What did you say? Is it? I still don't know how to say his name right. Antetokounmpo. We've been doing this.
That's probably right.
We've been doing this pod so long. We used to call him the alphabet. You remember?
Oh, what a lame nickname.
Yeah, it did not stick, man.
The Greek Freak, also not a good nickname.
No, and I kind of love those Nikes, those freak shoes, and it's not their fault that his nickname from his own camp is the Freak, but it's kind of an opportunity.
But then he says he doesn't like it, but then he still uses it, and they called it the Freak. I don't know.
Yeah, because he's not really a freak, right?
Kind of a freak.
Yeah, but we can understand what he Rodman would be more of a freak, right?
He's more of a freak of the week.
Ah, yes, the X-Files Freak of the Week episodes. Oh, we never got to talk about Rodman's cultural stuff. His boy, Kim Jong-un. Should we save it?
Yeah, let's save it. We'll save it for the Rodman episode.
Oh, yes, I can't wait.
So Giannis, a lot of people are raising questions about his work ethic. Because if you look at his numbers, and now that we can say the season is probably over,
Yeah.
and we don't need to say, well, the season is young. There's still 20 games to fix what went wrong.
It's a wrap, baby.
Some interesting stuff. So Giannis shot 30.6% from three this season. 2 years ago, he shot 30.7. As a rookie, he shot 34.7%. His career free throw percentage is 72.4%. This season, a career low 63.3 by a lot, not even close, plunging.
And all-time career high at attempts, 10 per game.
So he's getting to the line and taking threes more, despite being worse now than he was as a rookie. And I guess my question to you is this just a lack of work ethic?
He peaked, man. He's got fewer blocks, fewer steals than the year before, the same amount of turnovers. Does he want it enough, or has he been solved by the league? We're talking about the MVP here. So,
well, I'm just wondering, does he have too many distractions? Does he want to be a star in Milwaukee? I mean, as they say, Green Bay's nightlife is undefeated.
There's a beach there, man. A lake beach. but I love Milwaukee. But yeah, maybe he's too busy like sampling American foods and turning his girlfriend into internet celebrity. Maybe he should focus on the game more, man.
Put down the smoothies and get your ass in the paint.
Yeah.
Like, does he
Well,
not? Is he allergic to the gym?
Well, he said in this lockdown that he has no access to putting up shots, which
What-
is convenient.
I was about to say, what's changed?
Yeah, maybe last summer he also didn't have access to putting up shots in the gym.
Oh, no, I'm not going to practice. I do my practicing during games. Like, this is how I'm going to get better. I'm just going to shoot more and more threes and more free throws at a worse amount, but that'll make me better. I'll get better because I'm practicing. Like, 10 a game. So, over the course of the next couple weeks, I'll get up like 40 free throws.
So, like, he flies in the face of all the things we criticize James Harden for doing. Like, getting to the line 10 times a game is annoying to watch if you don't like it, but we never criticize Giannis for doing it, right?
I mean, Giannis is a fantastic player who offensively has one incredible gift. It's getting to the basket and being able to win one-on-one matchups at that place. It could be in transition. It could be in the half court. It doesn't matter. That is his unique gift. Put Giannis and one person next to him, he will figure out a way to score the basket. He'll dunk it on their face. He'll draw a foul. He'll score a layup. He'll get a finger roll. Whatever the case is, he is strong, incredibly strong, has an enormous wingspan, and can just go over the top. He lowers his shoulder and has kind of mastered almost a Bruce Lee 1-inch punch with his shoulder, where it doesn't look like a charge, but he's generating enough force to knock defenders backwards, and then he can just reach up over them and like anvil a dunk on their head. He's incredible at this. In transition, long strides, long reach, just goes up over people, dunks on them. But all of his skills, all of his offensive
Underrated
skills.
passer. Yeah.
He's not a great passer, but he's a good enough passer that when he attracts attention, he knows where to throw the ball. And the Bucks,
I would say he's good.
he's
I
good.
like him.
He's good.
Yeah.
He sees the floor.
Yeah.
He's not a gifted passer,
No.
but he sees the floor. He's willing to pass the ball, and to the Bucks' credit, they have created an offense that gives him visible passing lanes. Mm-hmm. They don't make it complicated. They spread the floor with 4 shooters around him. They put him under the basket, and then he can see where the help is coming from, and he can make the right decision. He's a fantastic, wonderful offensive player. Why is he so ashamed of who he is?
Why can't he just be his best self?
Seriously, why is he ashamed of being Shaquille O'Neal but mobile? That's who he is.
Dennis Rodman with a 3. I think he probably falls victim to the culture of like the last remnants of the Mamba mentality, right? Where if he's a more efficient player and stops shooting threes, it's easier to criticize him for not having a well-rounded game. But being a more inefficient player while shooting a bad shot like his three-point shot, people kind of give him a pass because he's trying. Like people want, like boomers secretly want like a participation awards, right?
What's remarkable is that he's been in the league for 7 years. It has not shown any actual improvement at shooting threes. And in this point, he's actually worse shooting from the line. He can't shoot. He's a functional non-shooter.
Which is fine. He's good at so many other things.
Awesome player. It is very strange that after 7 years in the league, people are still giving him brownie points for chucking up threes. It's 7 years, man. I know he's a young player and he came in very raw, but this idea that like Giannis is virtuous for taking 5 threes a game at 30% is really, really strange. Because
He is what he is.
if Andre Drummond was chucking up 5 threes a game at 30%, people would be like, what are you doing, man? Why? I want to get better at them. Okay, cool. Do it on your own time, my G.
I mean, it is what we want from the elite players in our league. Like, I don't think the basketball community would accept Ben Wallace as a top 3 player in vibes, like fantasy nerds, of course. But I don't think we would anoint someone MVP without being like, well, he kept the defense honest, so there was virtue in his weakness.
But is there something about Giannis, because he's in a small market, because he came into the league so young, because he's foreign?
It's hard to say his name.
It's hard to say his name, that we give him the benefit of the doubt as like he's working on it. He's trying to improve. This weird, like paternalizing defensiveness about a guy who is in his 7th year bricking 5 threes a game that they would not have given to LeBron James. Oh, he's just working on his game. Let him do it. Why? Who gets to shoot 5 threes a game 7 years into their career at a 30% rate? Who gets to do that? No one. It's just him.
The Milwaukee Bucks are not on the dartboard of the BMM offices. Like, the BMM is concerned with the Sixers, overall, the NBA. The Sixers, the Lakers, the Knicks, like the classic. It has yet to reach the BMM ire, but as soon as Jackie McMullen or the God, Bill Simmons, or Bob Ryan or ESPN are like, Giannis has a weakness and it can be exploited because he doesn't adjust, then we'll get some sort of overall pushback, right?
Are we not seeing it? Are we not giving the BMM the credit they deserve? What if this is all BMM? That they have boomer washed him into taking 5 threes a game because they know it makes Giannis worse.
Yeah.
And we've seen his overall efficiency plunge this season, in part because he now takes 5 threes a game at 30%. And what those shots have done is lowered his free throws per game and proportionally, and taken away from his shots at the rim, where he is absolutely dominant. The BMM may be the ones specifically encouraging this idea that he needs to add the 3 to his game, and it's cool if he does it in real time. Oh, it's a big game? Hoist up some 3s, man. You should totally practice now. That's not selfish at all. That's what normal players do. Practice 3s 7 years into their career. Absolutely. Yes. Do it, Giannis. Good for you. The BMM has done it again.
At least he wanted it enough. It was just a coin flip.
For real. Who is the biggest rival right now to the Boston Celtics? Who is the favorite in the East? And what's the best thing you can do to diminish the chances of Milwaukee beating you is to try to get Giannis to take some 3s and to take mid-range jumpers. Remember how they celebrated when he hit a couple garbage mid-range jumpers against Philly? Dude, we're seeing it. We are through the looking glass. We're down the leprechaun hole. Never want to use that phrase again.
Hey, I'm all for this, man. Yeah, I don't know, man. The way we coddle certain players and the way we
another millennial coddled.
Yeah. Aside, the whole Gen Z thing of like, I wish I was dead, that's done forever, right? Or is it going to come back?
I got to think on this.
Okay, next time, next cookies.
Like as in like Uzi, like all my friends are dead?
Yeah, it's a whole Z thing, right? Like even, it's a whole meme thing. When you see an image of something funny, bad happening, it's always, I wish that was me.
And now it's the new sincerity. Scolding.
Is there a sincere generation? Not Gen X, not the millennials.
Gen
not
X
the
might
boomers.
secretly be sincere.
I mean,
But
Gen
it's
X
cloaked. It's cloaked in irony
Failure.
and sarcasm and failure and loafing.
Yeah. In some Ethan Hawke goatee action going on.
Clerks.
Oh, we got to talk about Nylon coming back, man.
I wrote for Nylon a couple times.
Dude, we have all been through the Nylon cycle, the blender of Nylon.
I had a roommate years ago who was an art editor at Nylon, and I remember coming out of my bedroom you know, in like a towel or something, whatever, boxers, and like Interpol was sitting in my living room. Like, oh, hey guys. It's like in my mind, like, was that Interpol? Huh,
That
weird.
was a good band.
They were just doing a photo shoot, and they had stopped by there, you know, because they were going somewhere in Williamsburg. But yeah, a
Yeah.
weird thing to come out of your bedroom at 10 in the morning or whatever it was and see Interpol. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean,
it wasn't like even a cool thing. It was just, that's Interpol sitting on the couch, I think.
yeah. One time, Franz Ferdinand played at Bowery Ballroom, and I only knew that because they were in my living room. And I was like, what's happening here? And they're like, oh, we're friends of somebody who knows your roommate. And I'm like, that's cool. Don't you guys have to be at the venue? And they're like, nah, not for a couple of hours. I'm like, oh, you've done this before. You know what you're doing. But yeah, it was maybe we'll talk about old media popping up again. Oh, the next cookies.
Could be. But anyway, Giannis, don't listen to these guys. Don't be boomer poisoned. Be proud of what you can do. Dunk. You can't shoot. You're a terrible, terrible shooter. An abysmal shooter. You're a non-shooter. You don't create spacing. You don't make shots at a high enough volume to hurt your opponents. Just go and dunk, man. It's ethical.
If his next contract takes him to a different city with a different team, with a different point of view, the rumors have been Golden State, New York, two very different organizations with different thinking. Where do you think he becomes the better, more efficient player?
Well, if you put him on a team that doesn't have a stretch five, he's not that great. He is still great, but
Yes,
it
he is.
minimizes his success. And that's not even a knock on him. It's a knock on team building and roster construction. But there was a reason that they got Coach Bud and immediately stopped playing John Henson. You can't play him with someone else who scores in the paint. It just doesn't work.
Brook Lopez is the not so secret most important part of that team.
I mean, Giannis is the most important part of the team. But yes,
But
Giannis.
he makes everything work, right? You take him off, and
100%.
Giannis isn't the MVP anymore. Maybe.
I mean, look, there is a world where you just start playing Giannis at center full time, and I'm in for that world. But
sure.
what the Bucks are doing, you are absolutely correct. Brook is a huge component of floor spacing. He is probably the best three-point shooting five in the league, who is also a good defender. And their defense relies on collapsing in the paint, where Brook is a huge guy who stands there. And he was maligned as a poor defender over the course of his career, but they have found
Poor
a way
rebounder.
that
Yeah.
he works, which is just being a rim protector
and just shooting.
and
right.
just shooting. Yeah, he's magnificent for them in that role.
Yeah.
So to
totally.
your point, if you say, hey, this is going to be great, we're going to put you next to Mitchell Robinson, you're like, don't know about that, man.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
But if you're going to put him next to, I don't think he'd go to the Warriors. That doesn't make sense to me. He's too boomerified. But
Oh.
Durant was boomerified and he went, so I don't know.
I mean, the Warriors are going to be terrifying next season, but especially if they turn around that first round pick, their first overall pick probably. I don't know, man. I'm ready for these offseason moves.
Same. Let's just hope that Giannis can free himself from the clutches of the BBM boomers.
Escape the cloak of the green flag.
The green hand.
The small green hand that rocks the cradle.
Cookies.
Jeez.